Okay, gentlemen, it is that time. It is the mid-year podcast where we will be chatting about our top 10 albums of 2021 so far. That's right. We're already there. I can't believe we're in July already, but here we are. And quite an interesting first half of a year, I must admit.
I will say not as strong as last year.
I was going to say that at the end of last year, we said like this year was going to be fucking top tier because we'd had COVID, all that sort of stuff. Bands were just writing albums, writing music. I mean, it has been fairly stacked with a lot of the kind of big names, but I don't know if it has been as good as last year.
I don't think it has. Anyway. I was looking back at our lists, and I think it's more the diversity last year, which really kind of floored me when you were thinking that bands like Catatonia were up near the top of our list. I've yet to hear an album which has kind of put me on the back foot as much as Mountaineer did last year as well. But in saying that, I think it's still been an incredible year. I just don't think some of the ones that we are fully expecting to hit yet will be coming till later on in the year. Mostly because a lot of bands are once again still holding things back until they get that green light to start touring. Yep. So we've had a couple of the big names, but I think the back half's going to be a lot more stacked. Could be.
How did you find putting this list together? Find it difficult, or was it a fairly easy process, do you think?
For the most part, I had my top 3 or 4 were there. I don't have to worry about that. And then there was a lot kind of hovering around just making it but not quite. So where I've ended up on this list, I can almost guarantee next week maybe 9 and 10 would be replaced by another 2. But for them, I really like my list. It's a lot more diverse than my list last year, which I think goes to show that there's almost like every little genre has almost had something for me this year. Whereas last year I struggled with some of the stuff that was coming out. So I'm happy with it. We'll see if you guys are. You shout at me. What about you, Kyle? How did you get on?
Well, almost the same. The top 3, 4, even 5 were quite easily placed, and the others were just like, what have I been listening to a ton this year? And I had to really judge. So, but it wasn't super tough. I had it done pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But I did choose to exclude some of the bigger bands because lots of them are going to be on everyone's lists, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to concentrate on stuff I've really been listening to and enjoying more, and may not be so well known. So yeah.
Cool. Interesting. Yeah, I was just looking at my list from last year at this point, the kind of halfway point of last year. My list was pretty diverse last year as well, actually. There was 2 or 3 death metal albums in there midway. I think there was probably more by the end of the year.
Yeah.
But then, there was albums in there from last year like Sepultura that didn't even end up in my top 20 last year at the end of the year, which was in my top 10 halfway in. So there could be there could be a lot of change even from this list to the end of the year. You never know. Quite interesting to see how many I'm actually still listening to this year though from last year. Mountaineer's still obviously on there. Catatonia I still listen to quite a lot. I haven't went back to the Code Orange album as much as I thought I would actually.
There was something about last year in that album. Yeah. I don't know if it was because of the whole pandemic thing. It was a very energetic album for a very non-energetic time, which I think was was a good thing. But very much like yourself, I don't think I've listened to it at all this year.
No,
it was on repeat last year.
Well, we're all about 2021 now anyway. Forget last year. Let's do 2021. So we're going to kick off with our number 10s of 2021 so far. I'll kick us off on this one and then we can mix it up as we go through this. So, number 10. This one for me was a bit of a kind of late entry to my list. The album only came out about a month ago, so this is why it's probably coming in at number 10. I actually mentioned them on one of our last podcasts as one of my kind of recommendations of that month. And I ended up listening to the album so much that I ended up actually reviewing it for the site because I felt it was kind of too good to just kind of let it pass and not give it any praise, to be honest. I don't do many written reviews anymore. But this one, it's one of those albums that kind of wrote itself when I was listening to it. I had loads of things that I wanted to say about it, so I just thought, fuck it, let's do it. The band are a Russian quartet called Vorvan, and their new album Awakened. As I say, I think it came out in May this year. I mentioned that, I'm sure it was the last podcast I was talking about it. Initially caught my ear because of the production was the first thing that caught my ear, because it's basically pure violence in audible form. And then I read that it was produced by Kurt Ballou, who, like, you know my feelings on the guy. Aside from being the guitarist in Converge, he has produced some of my favourite albums. Everything he touches just kind of turns to gold, in my opinion. I don't think I've heard anything by him that I've thought, I'm not really fussed on that. Everything he does is amazing, and this is no exception, to be honest. This comes 5 years after their previous album, Once Love Was Lost, and these guys are just killing it on this release. If you've never heard them before, kind of amalgam of kind of metallic hardcore, sludge, punk, grind, a bit of melody in there as well. It's kind of like a mix of, there's a little bit of Converge in there, kind of Nails, Rotten Sound, Martyrdod, but there's like a kind of Kvelertak type melody kind of infused through the whole thing. And those melodies just kind of echo in your head after hearing it. It's an album that, for me, it's really infectious. I go back to it loads since it's only been out since May, but I've listened to it a ton. Everything is just executed so damn well. There's not a moment where I feel like they dropped the ball musically or vocally, and it's not predictable in the slightest. Even though I've mentioned those bands and those styles, don't go in expecting a particular sound, because they just constantly change it up throughout the album. I thought I knew how the album was going to go, and it kind of took me on a completely different journey, and I think that's why I love it so much. My only kind of small gripe with it is I think it's about 10 minutes too long. But that aside, I think it's an unbelievably great album, and that's why it's my number 10. So my number 10 is Vorvan and Awakened. Okay, Duncan, round to yourself. What you got for number 10?
Number 10 for me, an album that I was kind of stoked to check out. They'd been away for a while. It's been a while. And then they came back, with an absolute burner of an album. This is I Hate God, A History of Nomadic Behaviour. Oh, yep. Man, the riffs on this album is just like stacked with incredible stonery, sludgy, punky riffs, incredible production, and they're a band, we spoke about it during a review. Like, I was never the biggest I Hate God fan from that group of bands that essentially are the kind of foundations of Down, who, are probably the biggest out of that kind of group, of that amalgam of different acts. I Hate God were always like the ugly red-headed stepchild, mostly because their sound was generally quite abrasive, and I could never really quite get my hooks into it. And over time, as my tastes have changed, I've acclimated to it more. But this was them returning after a bit of a hiatus, mostly due to, I think it's the singer that had, was it cancer or something?
Liver transplant, I'm sure.
Something really fucking gnarly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that is giving them the urgency that it does, but you would never believe this band are as long in the tooth as they are. It's just a very energetic album with a lot to say. Granted, a lot of the lyrics are gibberish. Musically, it's just a really, really, really rewarding listen. The thing that kind of shocked me most about it is how much they've started to really embrace that kind of stonery, sludgy sound. They always had the sludge there, but it was darker and heavier and gnarlier. And if anything, I personally think this is maybe the most commercial thing they've done, and I don't use that as a slight against the band. I think if I was trying to get someone into I Hate God, this is where I'd start them, and then from there I would tell them to go back. I think it's brilliant front to back, and what I love about it is just how playful it is. Like, you'll be listening to a song and then the guitar just throws a little hook in, and it's maybe just a one-off on one verse. It just throws a wee something in there just to give it a little bit English. I could listen to it on repeat, and I have done quite a bit. And it would have been higher. It would have been higher. It was scoring generally quite high, but there's a couple in here that have come in the last 2 months that have sadly shunted it down a little bit. So there we go. Number 10 for me, I Hate God, A History of Novatic Behaviour.
Nice one. And Kyle, number 10.
Number 10 for me is a recent release, and that's why it's number 10, because it is genuinely very, very good, and I've been putting it on repeat a lot. It's really, really, really good mix of like old school and modern death metal is what I thought. But it's Cognitive. It's out, last week before?
We reviewed it a couple of weeks ago, but it comes out on the 16th of July.
Oh, there we go. See? So it's not even out yet.
So new.
It's still so new. That's why it's number 10, because, yeah. But no, I mean, it's really, really good. It's really interesting arrangements and fantastic songwriting, and I think they really did themselves a service by doing what they do. They're standing out from the crowd is how I feel, and I really, really hope that they carry on and do more of this, because I'm really looking forward to hearing more from them. So that the only reason they're number 10, like I said, really, really new, not even out yet as of this recording. So
yeah. They may the album may be out by the time this video goes up on YouTube, which is going to go on YouTube if you're listening to this on the podcast, but the podcast will be out before the album comes out. But do check it out. Stunningly good album.
Yeah, we may be hearing more about them as the show goes on. So.
Possible. Quite possible.
maybe.
Nice.
Foreshadowings.
Okay. Foreshadow. So.
Okay, number 9, gentlemen. Anyone want to start this one?
I'll go.
Go for it.
We got this album back in February. And I don't think it came out until like May or some shit like that. And I listened to it like 100 times, and I was constantly like, Dave, have you listened to it? 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 And you were like, maybe a wee bit of the first track. And then I'll get around to it eventually, and it was driving me up the fucking wall. And then we finally got a chance to talk about it, and we were all unanimously in agreement that it was fucking bitchin'. This one was from Svart Records. It's The Limit in Caveman Logic. I've spun this album to death. I'm still listening to it. I absolutely love it. This is the epitome of when they see things like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Because this is a super group of guys that have been in the industry for 40 plus years, like creating a super group together. And yeah, there's no new tricks here, but I'll tell you what there is, like incredibly accomplished musicians writing very, 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 very good music. There's just a feel. I think I said at the time that there's a style of writing music that's gone. It's never going to come back, right? Where people play on instinct and feel as opposed to technicality and brutal. You know what I mean? It's that way where, like, if I'm going to write a chorus, it has to be the catchiest chorus ever written. If I'm going to write a breakdown, it has to be the heaviest breakdown ever written. And I mean, that's great. It propels the genre forward. But I also think there's something lacking in the ability just to write a song on feeling. Does it fit? Does it not fit? Where should the song naturally go next? And that is The Limit. Like The Limit have that in spades. The production perfect. And what I love about it as well is the bass is nice, and it's an integral part of that band. So the bass line's all the way through it. Hooky, he's not just following what the guitar's doing. The guitar licks, it's got that kind of 70s punk attitude. I mean, like there's at least one of the guys in there who was involved with the Stooges, and you get that. And I was never really into this. I was never big into the Stooges, but you could feel that energy coming through. But what I love about it is the variety. There are elements of kind of 70s doom, which has kind of made a revival. We mentioned like bands like Beast Milk, have taken elements of that and made them more current. So as a result of that, by the time Caveman Logic was released, there's a part of me that kind of feels like, yeah, this is the time for that. It's not a long listen at all. It's just over 30 minutes, but every single track you could just listen to by itself, stand alone, over and over and over again. Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, we're now I've had it for almost 6 months, and I'm still playing ever loving fuck out of it, and still loving it as much as I did way back when we got our advanced 3 months ahead of when it was released stress related stomach ulcer for Duncan trying to get Dave to listen to it. original first listen. I'm so happy it made. Once again, this is another one that, given the right circumstances, may have just dropped out of the 10. 9 and 10 are ones that I really had to debate over other ones to go in, but I'm happy with the placement. So yeah. The Limit, Caveman Logic.
Nice. Kyle, what you got for number 9?
I don't know why this is a number 9. It's just not in my top 5, so I'm kind of going random for the last 5. But this is Montezuma's Revenge. This one came in recently as well.
Nice.
It's really fucking good, and I love it to pieces. That bass. I can't say enough about the bass on that album. It just it floored me. The whole thing. This is that album that made me come out as, I am a Doom fan now. I'm a Doom metal fan. I never have been before, but this album got me all the way there and gave me a little bit extra. So,
Albums
two
with
Russian bands already.
I know.
2 Russian bands. Yeah. So there's 2 already.
How is that?
Don't know.
So glad we asked the question.
Well, it was funny when we posted the Montezuma's Revenge review. They commented on the post, because we did it on our podcast, and they commented on the post saying, nice shout out to Vorvan as well, because I'd mentioned him in the podcast earlier on. So the two of them are obviously, they know who each other are, etc. And they've both made it in this list. Nice. Okay, my number 9. So this year in particular has been pretty epic in terms of deathcore. It's pretty safe to say. I think this year in particular, I've heard so many deathcore bands really kind of push the boundaries and kind of give this genre a kind of much needed injection of freshness. And for me, one of the best examples of that has come from a band called Brand of Sacrifice. This new album from the band, Lifeblood, is, to me, it's an absolute wrecking ball of an album. Not only is it kind of crushingly heavy in the riffs department, but it's really inventive as well. I wouldn't class this as a kind of paint by numbers album. It constantly keeps you engaged with the kind of myriad of styles. Aside from the kind of standard kind of stuff that you'll get, the deathcore grooves, the album has moments of electronics. You've got symphonic elements in there. There's choral vocals. You've got kind of just straight up death metal as well. And it's all delivered in this like extremely tight ball of like sonic devastation. I think they've really leveled up in terms of kind of song composition and execution. If you compare this to their last album, which was a good album as well, but you can hear the kind of massive leap they've made since that album. Production wise, as well, I think it's a fantastic production. It's very, how would you say, it's very kind of digitally kind of flawless. But for me, it kind of works with their new vision. You can hear that they were kind of pushing towards this more kind of clinical sound on the last album. But on Lifeblood, they've just kind of fully embraced it, and I love it. I think it's an album that just fucks on every level, as the kids say. When I sounded weird when
all I know is you have a kid, Dave. Your kid is what, 9 or 10, and if your kid's saying that, then
I've never heard her say that. No.
It just fucks on every level. It's still getting used from now on, and it's getting attributed back to you, so expect the hatred from my wife.
When I'm in the mood for something just to kind of crush my soul, this is what I go to. It's a really good album. It's a really good car album as well, where you just kind of blast the volume, and the riffs and the breakdowns and the grooves are just so fucking good. Love this album. Brand of Sacrifice and Lifeblood is my number 9. Okay, gents, on to number 8. Kyle, you can kick us off for this one.
Oh, kick it hard. This one from a 4-piece from Toronto has been getting a lot of plays. Yeah, 4 of them from Toronto. But it's You Can't Go Back by Sarin. Way back from February. Yeah.
Yep, almost made my list.
I thought you were going.
Yeah, absolutely, really loved it. I mean, when I first listened to it, I was like, yeah, but then it grew on me a lot, and then it grew on me even more since we did the review, and it's absolutely making my list. I've been really enjoying it the past few months. It's just fantastic. It's like a big mix of stuff, and they do it really, really, really well. So
yeah, a lot of styles going on there. A bit of a kind of, I'd say probably post metal is probably at the forefront.
Definitely,
but there's definitely loads of other things coming in. Really nice sounding album as well.
Yeah, super
Production
good
was
sounding.
cool.
I really like it. Yeah. So that's my number 8.
Nice. I didn't. That's not where I thought you were going to go with that, but you never know. The other band I was thinking of may come up.
Maybe.
I shall go next. Number 8 on mine. Huge fan of these guys. Loved their last album, and this new album just kind of delivered the goods as I hoped. The band are the Danish metal quartet Ghost Iris,
It's a good album.
and their new album Comatose. I was a little worried about this one initially because I was a huge fan of Apple of Discord, their previous album, and then the first single they released from Comatose was just like an absolute barn burner, like no clean vocals, just fucking pummeling riffs piled on top of each other. And don't get me wrong, I really dug it, but one of my favourite kind of Ghost Iris elements were those clean vocals. I think Jesper has a really distinctive tone. And for me, it's one of the things that kind of sets them apart from similar type bands. But it wasn't long before this new album delivered those sexy, sexy vocals, and all was good in Dave's world again. This is such a hook-laden album. For me, like almost every track on this could be a single, and they released like about 4 of them before the album came out, and I can see why, because like every single one of them has a massive hook on it. Even the heavier tracks where they don't kind of lean on the clean so much, they still manage to deliver a really kind of engaging formula on the tracks. I've went back to this a ton since we reviewed it. It's one of those releases that's just so easy to stick on and just kind of let the melodies and the big riffs just get right under your skin. Another one that's perfect for blasting in the car and kind of singing along to. I said on the review that their previous album was one of my favourites of 2019. And we'd see, you know, if this year, if Comatose would be able to kind of compete with that. And I think it absolutely does, easily. The more I hear it, the more I notice those kind of small kind of tweaks they made, the small refinements they made to their sound. Just you know, given almost like little areas of their sound that just a little bit of liposuction. It's probably the best way to describe it. It sounds leaner. It sounds leaner than before. Don't know where I was going with that. But it definitely makes me excited to hear what they're going to do next. That's my number 8, Ghost Iris, Comatose. Duncan, what you got for me?
An album we didn't even review. So there you go.
Ooh, here we
I
go.
know, coming in from left field because it's been... I mean, time has flown in this year. It's scary to think it's, you know, we're in July, but at the same time, there's been a lot of music dropped, and I feel that this one is just not making anyone's lists because people think it came out last year.
All right.
So this one is Cult of Luna and the Raging River. It did come out way back at the start of the year, but it's fucking incredible. It's like absolutely incredible. I'm a big Cult of Luna fan, and we talked about at the time, Vertical for me was like such a high watermark that I genuinely thought at that point, this is as good as it gets. And they have done stuff that has been very interesting afterwards, specifically kind of crossover stuff with Julie Christmas, which was an interesting enough listen, but to me it kind of felt like they'd peaked and then they were kind of like, well, what do we do now? And then they wandered the earth like nomads for a while. And they found their mojo. They got back in the studio. They self-released, if memory serves, I think as well.
I think it started their own label. I think,
which I also think it might be a reason that no one's fucking talking about this because I don't think. I'm just saying certain publications. I'm not saying they do reviews for pay, but check their lists out and check ours and see what you think. But I genuinely get, because it didn't get much coverage. This is Cult of Luna at their best. I think they're firing on all cylinders. It's big swaths of that post-metal goodness that we love. Every song is dripping with just dense, compacted energy and sound. It soars, it crushes, and it's just a really engaging and at times almost consuming listen. When you listen to it, this is one of these ones where you set aside some time, like you want to make sure you're like everyone's happy and in a different room, and then you put the big headphones on, close your eyes, and you shove on the Raging River, and every little thing is gonna be alright. It's so fucking good, man. So good. And they, as many albums as they are, in to doing what they're doing, now kind of taking things out of their own hands and putting out their own thing, and it still being as clinically interesting as, you know, the best of the back catalogue does my heart good. So yeah, Cult of Luna, The Raging River, and at number 8 for me.
Nice, good
I
show.
remember loving that album too. Yeah, it's really
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And you're right, though, that there's not a lot of people shouting about this album. It's
It
weird.
should be.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's money talks.
Money talks. Okay. Number 7, gentlemen. I think we're back around to me. I'll start with this one. So, this was an album that we all reviewed, and we're all pretty high on, to be honest. You guys marginally more than I was. The band were Boss Colloid and their album Family the Smiling Thrush. And I remember when we reviewed that album, and afterwards I was like, have I missed something? Have I fucked up here? So I've probably went back to this more than I normally would have, because the album's done exceptionally well, right across the board. Like I don't think I've seen any negative reviews at all of this. They're all pretty glowing. So I did go back to it quite a lot. And even though the repeat listens haven't modified my kind of rating I gave when we reviewed it, I can totally see why it's so universally adored. There's a lot to like about this. But I think probably the most significant thing about this band that stands out is they don't really sound like anybody else. They obviously they have elements that are the same, you know, that they kind of sludge and doom and prog and stoner, but they're very difficult to make direct comparisons with any other band. Mm-hmm. We mentioned at the time, the production on this is absolutely stunning. Chris Fielding has managed to capture a very kind of organic yet sonically kind of penetrating sound. It hits you with this kind of commanding weight in places, yet it can be equally kind of hypnotic in other parts. It's what I would describe as a real kind of journey album. At the time of reviewing it, I couldn't quite put my finger on why I didn't score it as high as you guys. I mean, there wasn't much in the scoring, to be honest, with half a point. But after spending kind of more time with it, I think I figured out it's probably down to the kind of the pace and the rhythm of the album. It's the only thing I can kind of figure out about it or think about that would cause me to kind of rate it slightly differently. It feels very continual throughout. It's like 45 minutes, I think, there's a runtime. It doesn't really venture out with that kind of tempo or even rhythmically, really. And for me, even though the kind of vocal melodies and the musical ideas are very clever and different on each track, I think it was that kind of absence of change in those areas that kind of stopped me from completely going all in on this. I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5, which was pretty close to perfect anyway, to be honest. But that was just my kind of personal feelings on it. I'm probably in the minority, to be honest, because everyone seems to be like absolutely loving this album. But even with those kind of minor gripes on the album, for me, it's still an absolutely fantastic listen, and that's why it's in my top 10. You can clearly hear how they've really worked on their sound since that last album. There's definitely less kind of experimentation on this, which is one of the issues I had with the previous album. They didn't seem to have a kind of purpose the last time when they experimented. They didn't really go anywhere. Whereas with this one, with Smile and Thrush, I feel like they have a purpose, like they are kind of building a section or leading you into something new. And I think kind of refinements like that have made all the difference. I honestly can't wait to hear this live, though. I think it will probably make even more sense to me when I see and hear this in person, to be honest. But until then, check it out. Boscaloid, Family the Smiling Thrush is my number 7.
I wonder if it'll appear anywhere else in anyone else's list.
Don't know. Need to keep listening to find out. Duncan, what you got for number 7?
First of 3 death metal albums gracing my 10 list.
Oh,
hell has frozen over, Dave. Oh, look at it frozen. Do you want to build a snowman? Let's not. Disney also,
because it's death metal.
Don't sue us, Disney. I mean, this I distinctly remember us having the conversation about how we weren't going to review this, and then we might review it, and then we were going to review it, and then we reviewed it, and then I fucking loved it, and then I bought the t-shirt, and Dave taught us how to pronounce it, which was helpful. Sanguisugabog is the name of the band. The album is Tortured Hole, which I fucking WHOLE before you start casting shade at your device. Oh man, this is so fucking good. Like so good. What I think what I enjoy most about it, above everything else, is specifically what they are doing in terms of just there's no airs no graces on this one. It is at its rawest form, but it still feels like a very accomplished album. Like they don't need any of that, as Kyle would say, like studio fuckery or anything. They don't need that at all. But it's still a really heavy death metal album. And it just everything they do just packs a fucking punch. Like everything. Now, granted, it's fully their sense of humour, which I wasn't au fait with at the time. And having gone back to I get it now, but at its basic level, it is just a really fucking well written, kind of old school death metal album with just a really kind of more modern without being too modern production. It flows really well. It hits you just repeatedly in the face. And vocally, that dude's vocals they're so fucking low. It's absolutely fucking ridiculous. And I was like, the thing about it is, it's one of those ones where you listen to it and you're like, I'll go see what that's like live. And then the last week, Dave sent us a live set of them. And that's what they fucking sound like live. I mean, It is so fucking on the money. It is unbelievable. So I've went back to this more than any self-respecting doubter of death metal, which should be my nickname. Oh, here comes the doubter of death metal. Oh, he rolled a 12. Oh, death metal won't make the list this time round. You know what I mean? Like, I shouldn't, on paper, I shouldn't like this. But this is the lowest scoring death metal album on my list, which just kind of floors me. I think something about... I think I very much like Dave have thought about this long and hard. I think it's the reverence to the old school that has kind of got me into it. I think we spoke about this before. I had a passing interest in death metal in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s, and then it started going all hyper technical and all the rest, and then I kind of stopped listening to it. And bands like this are flying the flag for the old school, and I kind of love that. And they're doing it in a way which doesn't feel like they're pandering or even on some level trying to plagiarise sounds from the past. They're all doing it in like really kind of inventive ways. Sanguisugabog are a prime example of that. Like I say, we almost never reviewed it. That's because we found a video of them from the previous release, and I think there was 2 of them in a bowling alley, in a social club, like fucking around, and I was like, oh, we might not have to do this. I'm so glad we did. I love it. Sanguisugabog, Tortured Hole, number 7 for this guy.
Nice.
I enjoyed that too, and I always wonder, how did they come up with the name Sanguisugabog?
Well, I'll tell you right now, you never make an accusation on any video that's going on YouTube that they used a thesaurus, because we know how people don't like that. So let's not say that.
No, I never will.
It was probably from Mad Max. I'll be a scene in Mad Max.
Probably, yeah. Could well be. Not that I've seen it 100 times and still missed the reference now.
So much shade being thrown, it's amazing.
Kyle, what you got for your number 7?
What I've got a Japanese band, which is
nice.
Like, what
nice. This was also just outside the 10.
Oh, really?
Dave's forgotten
you know
that
one
even existed.
I thought you were going somewhere else there for a minute, Kyle.
Core.
I was about to just fucking eject you
Core
from this
made
call.
his 10. He's been spending the last month telling us how much he hates it as a long con for him putting it in at number 7.
I've been listening to a lot of Dexcore recently, and I can tell you, I still fucking hate it. Oh my god, no, still not as bad as Stained. No, this is an album that was written and recorded 15 years ago and was released this year, and it's amazing. And I haven't stopped listening to it. It's so good. I can't remember the name of the album, but it's Sonic Flower. I had it written down, and the screen's just gone off, and I can't get it back on. I think the battery's died. Yeah, it's amazing. It was just, I don't know, the song, what was it? The song Captain Frost really is sticking in my mind.
Wasn't something like Rides Again or something like that, was it?
Yeah, something like that.
Rides Again, yeah.
Rides Again. Yeah, okay, cool. That is the one. So Rides Again by Sonic Flower, which is, I never used to listen to this type of stuff. It was like slow and not that heavy, but then it's really sticking with me this year. The past few months, all this stuff, doom and sort of slower paced, not so heavy stuff, more melodic, is sticking to me like hot glue.
And I'm like, the Dave and Duncan effect. Hang around with us enough time, and your taste will change as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, they're asking me, how much sugar can you listen to, Kyle? I'm like, all of it, all the time, every day. And they're like, nah. Get some of this 70s inspired funk rock metal into your face from Japan. I'm like, all right, cool, I will. And I did.
Tatsu from Church of Misery, just releasing the album that we didn't know we needed in our lives out of fucking nowhere. It was the second album that just missed out on the 10 for me. Yeah. It was very, very, very close. So it was between that and I Hate God.
Yeah. For me, it was between this and nothing else. It's just great. It's been on repeat. It's on my permanent playlist, and just love it. It comes on every now and then. I'm like, yeah, give it to me, Sonic Flower. So I hope they release more stuff, because this is really good. I really hope they're coming out with something new. So
production's so fucking good as well.
I know, it's really perfect for it just absolutely suits them down to the ground. There's no fuckery or anything. It's just wonderful all the way around, and it just makes me happy.
Number 6, Duncan. What you got at number 6?
This is where I'm going genre adjacent. So if you're getting ready to cast some shade, now is the time to do it. So last year they released one of my favourite albums, and there was no disputing that they were very much in the genre we're talking about. This year they released an album which is essentially like the more experimental quiet moments from what they released on the previous album. So all the stuff that kind of existed in between. The band are Loathe from the UK, and the album is The Things They Believe. This has been an unexpected creeper on my listens. I think this is what I listen to a lot when I can't sleep, which is, as people will know that have known me for a while, is a lot of the time. I don't sleep very well, so this is perfect nighttime listening for me. This is like the quieter, electronic, more experimental moments that were kind of peppered amongst their amazing album last year. What I love about it is that it doesn't feel like a cast-off album. It doesn't feel like we wrote all this stuff that didn't quite make the album. So it actually feels like the band themselves used the COVID time that a lot of bands were afforded, and kind of wanted to experiment and delve into those sounds further. It is an incredibly interesting listen. Granted, it uses a lot of instrumentation that appeals to my particular tastes. A lot of synth stuff in there. But it's very well written, and even if that's not the primary instrumentation, what I love about it is they have spent time making sure that the songs work really, really well. There's just a lot of clever playing on it without it being virtuoso or anything. It's just all designed to be textures and feelings and ambience, and it is such a smooth listen. And smooth is probably not what you were expecting from the top 10 metal albums, but I kind of lean back into it. I think it's important for a band to come off arguably one of the heavier albums I heard last year, in their heavier sections, to do something to decompress. And it feels like a decompression album where they're kind of expunging, there's a word that's never really used much, expunging those ideas out, kind of almost resetting the ground for what will inevitably inevitably be their next brutally fucking heavy release. I think it's great. I once again, this is another one that it came out to little or no fanfare. In fact, I think it'd been out for 2 weeks before I realised it was out. But it comes down to a lot of my picks. I've tracked back how many times I've listened to, and I've listened to this fucking hundreds. So yeah, Loathe, The Things They Believe, coming in at number 6 for me.
Nice.
And no one has called me a dick, so I will take that as a win.
No, I will let that one slide, Duncan. Absolutely.
Did anyone else? Did you listen to it all? Did anyone listen to it except
I
me?
did
I
listen
was
to
the
it.
only one.
No, I did check it out. It's not my kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kyle, what you got for number 6?
Cover Me in Synth. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're talking about something else now. All right, cool. This is actually one of the heavier albums to come out this year. Made up of like a bunch of people, like one guy mainly writing all the stuff, and got all these people together, including a very well-known vocalist who's been in a bunch of bands, and I was actually quite surprised at this. It's super heavy, and I really liked it, even though they did some studio fuckery. I could look right past it, and I actually quite liked it a lot. So, but it's Sarcoma by Alluvial.
Oh yeah,
it's actually stuck around. Yeah, I gave it the review, and I listened to it a bunch of times, and then I've just decided, seeing the name, like I'm going to put that on again. So.
Yeah,
and it's gotten a hell of a lot of play, so it's heavy as fuck, and I really like the songwriting. And studio fuckery aside, it's really well written songs, and they do stand out, and I like what they've got going on, and I hope they go on for a long and storied career, because I really want to see where they go on from here. So Alluvial.
Yeah. It's a really varied album, actually.
Yeah,
lots of little elements that are really interesting to listen to, and there's lots of kind of nice melody in there as well, which I wasn't expecting.
I know, yeah. It's not like it's just all death metal or deathcore or whatever all the time. It's like they really do mix it up, and that's what I appreciated from that one. Because sometimes you can get, but like, there's some bands out there that do the heavy thing really well, and then they just never let up and they never vary. And it's like, okay, by the end of it, I'm kind of bored, but these ones, they really keep you interesting. So,
yeah.
Please keep making music.
Yep, for sure. Number 6 for myself. Number 6. So aside from the Stained discography, this next band's album is currently my most.
Just ain't good, is it?
This next band's album is currently my most played album of 2021, just underneath Stained.
Really?
They fucked me. So I'd never heard of the band before until we got it in for a review. But they for me, they've put out one of the most addictive releases of the year for me. I've listened to this fucking loads. They are a French hardcore band. They're called Worst Doubt. And their new album, Extinction, is a goddamn underrated triumph. Again, not a lot of people talking about this band at all. It's massively influenced by a lot of kind of 90s kind of New York hardcore bands. Your kind of Turmoils and Cro-Mags and stuff, but
bands
also
that Dave
has
might have a passing interest in, is what you're
saying. Possibly mentioned them in the past, but they also have a bit of a modern twist, like bands like kind of Power Trip or like Trapped Under Ice, that sort of kind of sound. It's very riffy. It's aggressive as hell. It constantly kind of jumps in and out of rhythm and tempo changes, but without sounding like a kind of jumbled mess. Plus, it's got a production that would just fucking melt your teeth off, if that's even possible. But I think more than anything, I just loved how kind of authentic this is. But at the same time, I didn't feel like I was listening to a replica of those other New York hardcore bands. I think Worst Out have crafted a sound that not only makes them kind of distinctive, but it just makes me want to listen to this album on repeat. It's not an overly long album. I think it was just over half an hour, or just under half an hour maybe. It wasn't a long album, but as I said, this is like one of my most listened to albums so far in 2021, and I'd be kind of hugely surprised if it isn't still in my top 10 by the end of the year. Gets regular listens from me, and I'm not even slightly bored of it yet. They will 100% be above Stained by the end of the year. That I can guarantee.
Or die trying.
Yes, for sure.
Do you know what's really interesting about our essentially back five? Is not that? One of us has had a double yet.
No, that's true.
That'll change
True,
in
yeah.
the top 5, I'm sure. But in the
Yes,
back 5, not
sure.
one of us has had a double yet, which I found incredibly interesting because when we did our lists, there was all the way
Yeah,
up the
what
list.
crossover.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Okay. On with the lists, gentlemen. We are on to our number 5s. That's right. And kicking us off for number 5, it's Kyle. Kyle, what you got at your number 5 spot?
Oh, I didn't want to have to start this.
Yeah.
Start as we mean to go on with all the enthusiasm in the world.
You caught me off guard. Oh no, what do I do? Whatever you
Do
do,
it,
don't
Kyle.
panic, all right? You and me.
Don't panic.
I'm
Right.
panicking
So-
right now. As soon as you told me not to, I started panicking. Kyle, why would you do that?
Why would you
Deep
do that?
breaths.
You into a bag. Am I right? No, this one, Nefarious Wave.
Oh.
Oh yeah, this one took me by surprise actually, and I gave it the highest score we can give without breaking the rules. I think it was the first one of the year.
Yeah.
We're using that one. We're using that word first a wee bit loose, aren't we? I like that. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's playful. It's playful.
Yeah, very playful. No, this has been almost a daily listen. Almost, I've been listening to it so much, and they've actually
So-
influenced my songwriting a little bit.
Somnuri is the band, yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some
Just
Nuri,
mentioned that, yeah.
That's the band.
Somnuri
Yeah.
is the band.
I was going to build up to it, but
Oh, sorry. Right.
no, it's fine. Nefarious Wave. No, I've even showed it to my band and everybody I know. I've been sharing it around like it's on fire,
Like
just
COVID.
throwing it at everyone, like COVID. Yeah, coughing Somnuri on everybody, just wandering out. This, everyone thinks I've got cancer.
Oh, dear.
Yes, Kyle. Yes.
Yeah, so this is a very good album, and you should listen to it. It has some amazing stuff, like such great layering of vocals, and the riffs are fantastic, and the production is just amazingly on point.
Yeah.
And like I said, 5 out of 5 from me when we reviewed it, and it has not changed. It's only gotten better. So
From,
that's my
from
number 5.
New York, I think,
Yep.
aren't they?
Yeah, New York.
You
yeah.
wouldn't be able to tell from the accent, David, but New
Fuck
York.
you.
New York, Scotland. Right?
Yeah. I'm not even sure it was Scottish. We've got a team of experts trying to work out where it might be from.
Okay.
Very quick to hire,
yeah, nice, good pick. Somnuri, I do like them. Nice bit of sludge in there, but a nice bit of melody as well at times, which I quite
yeah.
liked. Liked them.
Massive, well, not massively varied, but very varied and
Yeah.
varied enough to keep you interested. So.
Okay, my number 5. So, no massive surprise really that this is sitting in my top 10 at this point of the year. It was probably one of the most anticipated releases of 2021.
Are we about to twins you up here?
Oh, maybe.
I think we might be there.
It was, of course, the French metal titans, Gojira.
He's back with
That was-
those
that was
amazing
French.
amazing
That was so
impressions.
French.
Yeah, that was authentic as fuck.
You thought I was French for a second, didn't you?
No, I thought I was in France,
You could,
just driving through in my chair.
yeah, I closed my eyes for a second and I could hear the distant twangs of an accordion.
Smell the garlic in the air.
Right, now we're just being racist. Let's pull back from that.
That's just the cheese and garlic sandwich I had earlier.
Oh, yes, Gojira and their new album Fortitude is my number 5. Album number 7 for the band came 5 years after their last album Magma. If you've heard our 45-minute feature-length movie review on this album, then you will know. I had it is 45 minutes long. I had pretty big reservations coming into this. I was a little bit perplexed by the singles they released. I wasn't sure how I felt about it at all from the individual tracks. But thankfully, when I heard the album, it all just came together. It has a lot of the core Gojira elements. This sounds like a Gojira album, but I didn't feel like this was necessarily a predictable Gojira album for the most part. The way they kind of structured the songs, the way they play a lot of the melodies and play with a lot of the kind of dynamics, it feels, as I said on the review, it feels like an album that's been put together note by note, bar by bar. It's not their most technical album or even their heaviest album overall. However, there are moments where they do go back to basics and just do what Gojira do best and just kind of level you with some unbelievably heavy riffs and those classic pick scrapes. Sphinx being a perfect example of that on the album. But those heavier moments also feel like they land heavier because they've taken you through tracks with, you know, a bit more melody, or they go a bit more experimental. They take you on a bit of a journey. And I kind of loved that uncertainty. Once I heard the album, I kind of got it. I felt like I wasn't sure where it was kind of going to go next. You know, that the singles were kind of all over the place. And the album does feel a bit like that as well, the way it kind of takes you through it. It's not a perfect album. I didn't score it. It wasn't a 5 out of 5. It was close, a 4.5. There was, you know, a couple of areas where I felt like it just didn't land on the money, and there were a couple of tracks that I wasn't, you know, hugely in love with the placement of. But that aside, it's a fucking great Gojira album with another stunning production. And I think it's another solid release in their catalogue, to be honest. I don't think they've ever released a bad album, to be honest, but I think this is another great one to put in the collection, to be honest. So Gojira Fortitude is my number 5. Duncan, what do you have for number 5?
This little French band, is that what we're doing apparently? Hello, hello. There is a minky on your shoulder. Yeah. Gojira Fortitude. What's interesting about this is it's landed in the same position for both of us, but we started our journeys in completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Like almost straight away from listening to Another World last year, I was fully in. Yep. I liked the fact that what I was hearing sounded different, and what I was hoping for most from this release was difference, because we've had Gojira have they've meticulously crafted such a singular sound that is so uniquely theirs, that at this point, 7 albums in, where do you take that? And that seems to be where they're getting some of the backlash, is some people just want that over and over and over again. But I think it has diminishing returns where you don't have a band who are clearly very, very, very good at pretty much everything they turn their hand to. All the experimentations, even at that kind of 70s inspired kind of classic metal stuff they infuse in it, is the top of the fucking pile. And they make it sound so fucking effortless. Everything on the album sounds so effortless to them. And that belies the sheer amount of work. I'm with you. It's like note by note construction in this one. It is faultless on that level. It's not their best album. That's the only reason it's sitting at 5 for me. I think they created and crafted that best album over a decade ago now. But what's interesting about Gojira is they have retained and will continue to retain that top level status without doing what other bands do at this stage. The band I compared them to earlier on this year was Lamb of God, who are probably comparably on about the same level as Gojira when we talk about bands of importance in the metal genre now that came up through the 2000s. And Lamb of God released a very safe album last year. As a return, Gojira didn't release anything remotely near a safe album, but it's being compared to a safe album because they didn't go balls to the wall heavy start to finish. I think it's brilliant. I think it is, like you mentioned, journey albums. To me, it is a journey album. And those moments where they kind of brush things off and go back to basics sound 100 times heavier because they're surrounded by songs that aren't back to basics either side. You can sometimes, I think that's why they punish you live so much, is there's sometimes a complacency in how heavy Gojira actually are, because some of their albums are just that from start to finish, that you kind of lose track of where on the heavy scale is this if everything is the same. The dynamics on this album allow you to absorb exactly how crushing that band can be at the flip of a switch, because stuff around about it is not as heavy. So I think it's brilliant. And yeah, it might not be top of the list where I suspect some publications will be placing it. But when people are talking about how important Gojira has been to metal in the last 15, 20 years, this album is a stark reminder of a band that still... I still think they could, at a whim, release an album that tops From Mars to Sirius. I don't think they've done it yet, but there's no sign of them, being so far removed that they couldn't do it. So yeah, it's a great album. Fortitude is legitimately fucking great.
Legit the shit. Okay. Number 5s are done and dusted. Number 4. Okay. Let me take this one, gents.
Oh dear.
Number 4. Oh, sweet baby Jesus. This is where we're getting serious, gents. This album just oozes the heavy. I mentioned earlier that this year was quickly becoming the year that kind of deathcore attracted some much needed attention, and this is a prime example of a band turning those heads. I was always a fan, but this new album has increased that appreciation tenfold. They are the Ronnie Coleman of deathcore. It is Osaya and their album Loss. This is a colossal fucking gut punch of an album. It is literally bursting at the seams with great riffs and ideas. So much so that every time I listen to this, I notice something else to love about it. They have just leveled up in all aspects of their craft. Songwriting being the main one, in my opinion, but the freshness and the kind of ingenuity of the riffs on this album are just sublime. I have listened to this so much. They do so many great things on this and do them so well. I think they transition in and out of sections seamlessly. Nothing feels out of place or oddly kind of added in for no reason. Every track delivers that kind of killer moment, when they ramp up the intensity and then just kind of rip with something so heavy it'll just split you in half. This album, it never left me bored or wanting to skip to the next track. It just hooks you in and it kind of keeps a hold of you for the whole ride. I think we said in the review that it was maybe a touch too long, and I think that's still my only kind of minor gripe, that I think they could have possibly cut one, possibly 2 tracks, and they would have still delivered the same level of quality and brutality. If you'd asked me to pick, which tracks I would cut, I don't think I could have done it. I don't think any of the tracks are weaker than the others. I just think they could have delivered all they needed more concisely, but to be honest, fucking forget what I just said. It's not really a big issue. Having too many good tracks is not a big issue. The album still rips in every way, shape and form, and I cannot wait to hear this played live. My number 4, Osaya, Loss. Duncan, what you got at number 4?
Another doubler coming up here from something that's been mentioned earlier on. Another death metal album. Which is very shocking, and there's still one to come. Who would have thought it? So yeah, this is technically not out, as Dave explained earlier on, but technically our review's dropped, and it's albums that we've heard, so if it's not out yet, fuck it, sorry, you just need to listen to it when it comes out. Or become a
Strangely, my thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, just become a reviewer.
Yeah, come on.
Join the gang. Yeah, this is
someone else's gang. This one's full.
Yeah,
right?
This one's full. No, you're not getting in here. Just saying. Cognitive. Malevolent thoughts of a hastened extinction, sorry, not existence. That's the other way around. I've inverted it. Flipped it and reversed it, like Missy J would say. It was Missy J, wasn't it? Missy Elliott, not Missy J.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I try to say goodbye and I choke. But anyway, so this is what it looks like to have a stroke on camera. So yeah, Cognitive. Oh man, this is, once again, for a lot of the reasons Kyle mentioned earlier on, I think the reason this album grabbed me is its reverence for old school death metal. It takes it adds elements that I think are surprising and needed on top of it, but it just kind of reinvents it. It makes it feel like a modern take on something familiar, without sacrificing any of what you would want from that. The guitar solos are blistering. The vocals, man, honestly, are just like maybe my favourite death metal vocals this year, I think, just hands down. And I'm throwing deathcore in there as well, Dave. I think he has a tone that is just like, if I could make that noise, there is only one place I could go, a death metal band. Or a McDonald's drive-through to scare the shit out of someone when they ask for a Big Mac. You know what I mean? Just fucking hit them with it. It's punishingly heavy, but it's not. It's punishingly heavy, but not in a way where it's off-putting to listen, where I have to be in a mood to like be violently punched in the face with music. There is, like I mentioned at the time, there's something kind of thrashy about its aggression and its attack. It's just the riffs are heavier versions of those, very much like another album I'm going to talk about shortly. It just continued to keep me interested, and has continued since to keep me interested, so much so that the album it's below just now, it might actually end up topping over by the end of the year. It's just I've had more time with the other album. I feel myself going back to it a lot, because it just has an energy and enthusiasm and a craft about it that I really appreciate. It's not the most technically diverse death metal album that you're going to hear this year, but it doesn't compromise in any way, shape or form. It sticks to what it is incredibly good at, and then gives you a higher level of that. All the musicianship is top drawer, without necessarily being virtuoso in any capacity, which is where some of that death metal stuff loses me. It's like, we're going to have this 1 minute segment where we're going to go off and do all this really fucking intense time signature shit. And I'm listening to it, and by the time I get to the end of it, I appreciate the craft that's went into it, but I don't think it suits the song. Whereas everything on this album suits the song. I mean, I gave it a 5, which I think is well deserved for an album of this quality, and I think it's only going to get better. And it was the first time I'd heard of them. I didn't realise they'd had as many albums out beforehand. And they're a band that I am desperate to see live, because I think live they will fucking shred. So, Cognitive, Malevolent Thoughts of a Hastened Extinction is my number 4. Absolutely fucking love this album.
Nice. And Kyle, what you got for number 4?
I got a band that have been mentioned before, so not to sound like a broken record, but it is definitely not Gojira. They're not on my list. Not because it's a bad album, but because I'm just not putting bigger bands on it. But this one is, I feel like they gained a certain new type, not new, but they grew into their sound on this album, even though they've been around for a long time. And they gained a new sort of confidence, and just sort of became more of exactly who they were. And this album was like just them, basically. There's no band that sounds like them in anywhere, but they're from the UK. It's Boskeloid.
Nice. Okay, gents. Top 3 time. And kicking us off with his number 3, Duncan, what you got for me?
Number 3 for me is an album that's actually just been mentioned. Is Boskeloid with Family the Smiling Thrush. Made my top 3. We spoke about it at the time when we were doing the review. This is a band who released an album prior to this that everyone was into, and I thought was okay. I thought it was a fine album and nothing more. And we have a friend. We all have a friend. But, we have a friend who is doing PR for them and has been bigging them up something rotten, to the point that I actually started to go on the sceptical kind of view of, when you make so much noise about something, does that actually mean you're hiding something? And how is it going to land? And this album, from the first listen, just blew me away. I think, first and foremost, you mentioned that the production on it is maybe my favourite production this year, like just of an album. It's immaculate, and everything's so crystal clear. I think it genre jumps in a way which on some levels shouldn't work as easy as they make it sound. They really and none of them are too disparate, but they will happily just go a bit sludgy and then very kind of commercial rock, and then throw a bit of doom in there if they want, and then go somewhere else, bit prog. And my previous issue was when they did that, it didn't always marry up to a hill of beans. You would get to a point at the end of it, you'd be like, all right, it's not where I would have finished it. This time around, it all works so seamless. It genuinely, very much like the Gojira album, this feels like an album that has had a huge amount of time and craft building it to create the best songs. I know you were saying, and I hadn't thought of it as being kind of very insular on its pace. All the songs are probably relatively in or around the same beats per minute. But that actually surprisingly works for me, because this is an album that I listen to as it feels like one giant song. And it's like one full experience. And that's kind of what made me fall in love with it first time I listened to it. And it's still the thing I love about it now. I think vocally it is very interesting with catchy as fuck hooks. The dude's melodies are absolutely brilliant. And there's a playfulness about it that I just find infectious. It's an album that on repeat listens, there's another little bit that I'm like, oh, that's really clever. And I'm surprised I'm only picking it out now. I think I genuinely think it's great. I think Boss Colloid on this album should be the band that we're all willing to become the next big thing. I think they have the potential to become one of the more interesting bigger bands from the UK, genuinely top tier. Because there's not, like you mentioned before, no one doing what they're doing in the genre that they've kind of crafted from themselves. There's plenty of bands you could compare them to, but none of them that are doing it this way. And that to me is exciting. I think just in general, that this is what I want for music. And we had said before that the music I seem to be gravitating to the most this year, maybe not represented fully on this list, are the bands that are doing things that just feel different to everyone else. This is an album that you could take a 30-second clip of any song and play for me at the end of the year, and I'll be like, oh, that's Boss Colloid. Straight away, I absolutely love it. I dubbed the genre hermitcore, which I hope would trend more, and it didn't. I think we're maybe a bit too early for it. Give it a year, and they'll reference back to me year zero when it was mentioned, 2021. You're welcome. And I think I did also compare them to a hedgehog trapped in a hedge, which I don't know where, I had an idea where that was going to go, but I couldn't quite verbalise it. Suffice to say, it's an incredible album by a band who are now well and truly on my radar, and I can't wait to see. I'm very much like yourself, I know they're touring later on in the year, and I will be there, and I can't wait to see it live, because if it's half as good as it sounds on CD, I will be royally fucking spoiled. So, Boss Colloid, Family of the Smiling Thrush, in at number 3.
Nice. Kyle, what you got at number 3?
I got some noise rock, 90s styled noise rock with some harsh industrial elements and a bit of a groove in there too.
Ooh.
I give this album 5 out of 5 because the fucking bass tone.
It's a theme here, I think.
And the bass tone and the unpredictability of the album itself, where it just kept me guessing all the way through. I had no idea where it was going, and it kept me happy all the way through. But it's Smile Less by Throat.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It took me by surprise, like I said, and it just kept me guessing, and it still does now. And I just love listening to what's going to happen. I don't remember. Oh, it's that thing. Yeah, okay. So I keep listening to it, and it's really, really, really good. I gave it a 5 out of 5, and I would give it a 6 now if I could. It's just fucking, I don't know how they make it sound so effortless. Honestly, they've got so much going on, but it's not like I said back, it's not like just taped together. It's like it transitions so smoothly from one to the other. There's lots of melody and lots of harsh noises and lots of experimentation, but it all works together really well, and it just I enjoy it. I enjoy it a hell of a lot. So yeah, Smile Less by Throat. Came out on my birthday, which is absolutely nothing to do with it.
It's got that Smart Records thing about it, though. You know, they have this ability of picking bands that are so individual and unique. They're a really, really good label, actually. Really good label.
I completely agree.
Okay, number three. No fucking around. Genghis Tron, Dream Weapon.
Okay.
What a fucking comeback album. I mean, like 13 years after Board Up the House, little couple of lineup changes, they have absolutely 100% put themselves back on the map. They're no longer a band that sound like they used to. You know, they were very abrasive and confrontational, but one that has really evolved and produced what is easily their most complex and layered and dynamic, yet probably rewarding work to date, and probably definitely their most accessible album so far in their career. This is no longer a wave of blast beats and technical riffs and odd time signatures, but as the name kind of suggests, it's filled with a very kind of dream-like texture and cinematic sounds. It's not a heavy album, really, in the slightest. They've gone down a far more kind of synthy and shoegaze meets electronic space rock type vibe, but it's a very hypnotic and serene kind of experience. An album that you can't help but be totally immersed in. Every time I listen to it, I've got to listen to it from start to finish. I can't just drop in and out of this album at all. I would recommend listening to it on a really good pair of headphones. I think it makes such a huge difference. I found myself, just as I said, being really immersed in it and picking up on little kind of subtleties that I actually completely missed on the first couple of listens. Little moments from the guitars, little things in the background, and synths that kind of subtly intertwine, or a little kind of drum fill that really elevates a kind of build up. And the production, Kurt Ballou, just phenomenal. Like, it's very different to what he would usually do. If you listen to his catalogue of stuff he's done, it's all very kind of sludge and grind and punk and like all sorts. But this is very, very clean and very kind of pristine sounding, but it still sounds very organic, which he does very well with those more type of even with the abrasive type bands he works with, they always sound very organic. This album is a stunner. It's an absolute stunner. I listened to it again a ton, just, you know, as I was creating my list, and again I just got totally swept up in it again. It's a brilliant album. Really, really enjoyed this one. And that's my number 3, Genghis Tron and Dream Weapon. Okay, gents. Number 2. Kyle, what you got?
I don't need to go number 2 right now, but thanks for asking.
Toilet humor. Nice.
Kyle.
Oh, yeah. You knew it was going to happen. And twice a day, like clockwork.
Twice a day? What a fibre
Anyway.
in that diet.
Yeah, a lot of it. That's how you keep it twice a day. Anyway.
Either that or Kyle's
this
full of
band-
shit. One of the two. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely the later one. This one came out. I don't remember when, but a while ago, a few months ago. But I gave it 5 out of 5, and I called the production on it perfect, and I could not have been more right. Sorry. It was, every time I listen to it, I'm just like, yep, there's no fucker here. It's absolutely how the band sounds. It's all they are and everything. And it was the guitarist that produced the album, and it's called Pilgrimage by the band Old with an E, and it is absolutely top spot. Number 2 on my list, because I just can't get enough of it. It's just so good from beginning to end.
Yep.
Depth Charge, that song just makes me so happy in my soul for being. It's just so heavy, but also so like kind of rock and roll, but heavy rock and roll. And I don't know, it's just amazing, and I really love it. And it's not the heaviest album ever, but it's close too, you know.
Yeah, there's definite moments where they're touching on those kind of like kind of doomier moments and you know, sludgier moments, but yeah, I gotta agree with it. Saxophone.
I don't know if it's a bad cough I've got there, I'll tell you.
At the risk
me
of it
that
becoming
sax.
a trend, the
Yes.
saxophone
Yes.
on the album is fantastic. I love how they blended it in, and it just sort of came in. And you're like, "Is that that's a fucking saxophone?" And then it went into guitar, and it's like, I need to talk to that producer. It's really, really good, and I can't stop listening to it. It is a daily listen for me. So
Nice.
just
Yeah,
right
good
up there
album.
on my playlist. Fantastic album.
Old. Next one.
Old.
Number 2 for me has been mentioned twice already on this list. So I'd say I'm not going to go on about it, but I probably will go on about it because I love it so
Talk about
much.
it.
We've waxed lyrical about this, like, on our review. As I said, it's not out to the 16th of July, but check out when it comes out. There was no way this wasn't going to make my top 10 list. They are the New Jersey death metal band Cognitive, and their new album Malevolent Thoughts of a Hastened Extinction. As I said in the review, it has been said, I was surprised I never heard of the band before, this being their 4th album, and they've been on the go for over 10 years, but I think that kind of plays into why I like this so much. I think the kind of shock of that kind of made me love it even more. Sometimes it's better not to see the trailer before the movie, because sometimes you know too much going in. But because I really hadn't listened to any of their previous albums, I wasn't really entirely sure what I was going to get on this. Even though I'd heard a couple of singles, I wasn't still entirely sure what was going to happen on this album. And I think the kind of level of perfection on this kind of took me aback. They have dropped an album that is so tight and punishing, so well thought out and structured that I couldn't not be impressed with this. It keeps me totally engaged every time I listen to it from start to end. Partly because I think the riffs are so well crafted. They don't feel formulaic at all. The guys have put so much detail into this. The songwriting is really varied and interesting. There wasn't a moment of this where I felt like it was like, oh, that's been kind of hastily put together, or it feels like they've, just stuck it in for no reason. They've went through this with a fine-tooth comb and thought about how they can make each part of this album captivating. Because, with the level of kind of expertise these guys have between them, it would have been so easy just to churn out a kind of generic death metal album made during COVID. Because we've heard so many bands in the past 6 months release albums that were clearly just to get something out there and let people know that they haven't fallen off the face of the earth. And you can tell a lot of the time it's a bit of a rush job, whether it's the quality of the songs or the tightness of the whole thing, or even the kind of bedroom production jobs that we're hearing a lot of at the moment. Cognitive didn't do that at all. They've took the time given to them during lockdown and made sure there were no rough edges or substandard elements on this release. I think it's expertly structured and perfectly balanced between progressive technicality and all-out kind of brutality. They know when to kind of rein it in and let the tracks breathe a little. They have a great grasp on kind of when to go down a more kind of ominous path, but they also know when exactly to pull that trigger on a kind of colossal groove or a breakdown. And I think it's because of that I found this such a kind of rewarding listen, and one that I love even more every time I hear it. I can't recommend this album enough. I gave it a 5. It is kind of death metal of the highest standard in my opinion. Definitely check this one out when it drops on the 16th of July. Cognitive, Malevolent Thoughts of a Hastened Extinction is my number 2. Okay, so before we get to the number 1 spot, I'm going to give you a wee bit of music.
I've not done my number 2.
Have you not? Oh, sorry, Duncan.
How dare you? How fucking dare you just disregard Duncan's number 2? Who gives a fuck about Duncan? Who gives a fuck
Sorry about that, Duncan.
Who gives
Duncan.
a fuck about Duncan?
Duncan, what's your number 2?
Well, I feel slighted, Dave. And of all the ones that you would want to skip, you will not want to skip this one because hell has indeed completely frozen over. Partially frozen over earlier on, but now completely frozen over. I feel like I felt last year when I was sitting at the end of the year going, did Napalm Death just make my top 5? Like, the guy who had tried for years to get into them and couldn't get into them. Well, lightning has struck twice, Dave. Because here we are, a band that I've genuinely tried to get into God knows how many times. You've thrust them upon me not respecting my personal bubble, my boundaries, or respecting the words no, Dave. How dare you? No means no.
Sorry.
Fuck. But yeah, here we are with the midway point of the year, and sitting at number 2 for me, Violence Unimagined by the band Cannibal Corpse. Dear God Almighty, is this album... does it fuck? Yes, it does, Dave. Apparently, that's what the kids say. Fucks hard. Don't know where we're going with it. It is so fucking good. Like, so good. And the thing that has perturbed me slightly about this, because it seems to be whenever I like an album, all the fans don't like it anymore. They all go off and like something else. And this seems to be what there's a lot of people very complacently just saying, "Oh, it's another Cannibal Corpse album." How dare you?
How dare you?
No, it's not. No, it's not. The reason this one, I think, is more aligned with my interest at the moment is specifically the fact that the guitar work on it is elevated. Like, for me, I think this is an album that flourishes on the guitar work. Everything else in the band, it ain't broke, so no need to fix it. But the guitar work is where it's really found its place. No riff overstays its welcome at all. Everything is perfectly placed. As soon as it gets to that point where you're like, do I want to hear this riff again? They're already down to the next thing. The guitar solos are absolutely fucking stunning. Like, absolutely stunning. You have incredible drum work. Just like the guy is a fucking machine in the background, just keeping everything interesting and tight. The production on it is like perfect. It's like perfect production for an album that sounds like this. Yeah. It would be so easy to go in and just start messing with things, and they've not done it, which makes me happy.
Yep. Makes me happy too. You have no idea how happy that made me when I was like, "There's no fuckery here. Wonderful."
You don't need it. But you don't need it when this band sound as good as this does. And then you've got the old Corpse Grinder in there doing. How he's still got a voice, I don't know. It baffles me, but it's perfect. It's perfect, and it fits perfect. It's an album that just doesn't give up, but it has plenty of moments where it just hits you with some grooves. It's not monotone in the way that I dislike. It's inventive, it's creative, it's engaging. It's, by God, is it heavy, but it's respectful from the genre they've come up from, that they've helped create, and they are still essentially sitting the top of. For me, I think this is an album which reminds you that, yes, there's a lot of bands out there playing death metal, but there's only one fucking Cannibal Corpse. So yeah, Violence Unimagined. Still don't like the name of the album. Would still change that. Unimagined is not a great word. Plus, Violence Unimagined, so it no longer exists. I'd like, no. Everything apart from that, fucking flawless. And I've put a Cannibal Corpse album as my second highest album at the halfway mark of 2021.
Nice. Okay, gentlemen, we've finally made it. It's the number one album of 2021 so far. This one's been mentioned already, but it is my number one. It is my favourite album of this year so far.
And the least shocking surprise of all time.
If you'd said to me 30 years after Eaten Back to Life, this band would be releasing albums like this, I would have laughed in your face. I'd have spat in your face, actually.
You would also have been 9 years old. How dare you laugh and spit in an adult's face?
That's right. Fuck, if you told me this band would keep getting better after albums like The Wretched Spawn or Kill or even Red Before Black, I would have said, that's no possible. But here we are, talking about what could be the most perfect Cannibal Corpse album to date. That's right, my number one is Violence Unimagined. Not only is this album crushingly heavy in true Cannibal Corpse form, but in terms of quality, it is one of their most consistent albums front to back. And I'm not saying that's down to the fresh blood of Eric Rutan on guitar, but
Rutan's the man.
Is. Rutan is the man. And I don't necessarily think their previous formula was broken or uninteresting, but I feel like, firstly, they've pushed themselves to new levels on this one, which I believe is down to Eric coming in and the rest of the band feeling like they really need to go that kind of extra mile to match what he's bringing to the table. And secondly, I think the songwriting tweaks they've made, the small details they've added in, I think have had a massive difference. They've already said that Eric wrote at least 3 of the songs on the album and had input on the other tracks as well as lyrics as well. And I think, as Duncan said earlier, the guitar work on this is next level. It is top tier, in my opinion. The riffs are inventive, they're fresh, they're interesting, they keep you engaged for the whole time. Nothing feels like it's being reused or it becomes monotonous. Vocally, this could be Corpsegrinder's best performance. I think he's always had a phenomenal tone and delivery, but I think lyrically, his phrasing and timing on this is bang on, and somehow his vocals seem to be getting better.
Yeah,
like it doesn't make sense. Like he's been screaming like this for decades, and his voice just seems to be maturing and getting better. It's just fucking mind blowing.
It's testament to see people that say, "Oh, it's just screaming, it's just noise." It's technique.
Yeah,
because
totally
those that don't have technique, their voice doesn't last.
No.
The length that his has and gets better. That is all 100% technique.
Yeah. Yeah. It's brutally heavy, but it's kind of catchy in a way as well. I mean, not in a kind of sing-along chorus type way, but just, the way that he puts it together and the lyrics that he picks, you can't help but they become totally kind of ingrained in your head. I think, like Napalm Death, I think Cannibal Corpse only seem to be getting better with age. And the funny thing is, I don't think they're even close to being done. I think this injection of freshness from Eric Rutan will only make them hungrier for more, to be honest. And I kind of can't wait to hear what they do next with him. Obviously, they're going to hopefully tour the shit out of this album once they can. And so they should, because it's a fucking stunning album. But, whenever it happens and they do end up back in the studio writing again, I'll be really excited to hear what they do in the next release. It's phenomenal. It's a perfect album in my opinion. I couldn't find any fault with it in terms of the songwriting, in terms of the production. The delivery of it is just kind of perfect front to back. And I love it. That's my number 1, Cannibal Corpse, Violence Unimagined. Duncan, what you got at number 1?
Once again, surprising no one here, because if you've been paying attention, I said when I heard this album, when we reviewed it, the likelihood is it would be I'm still convinced this will be number 1 at the end of the year for me. Wow. That's it's going to take a lot to dethrone an album that's already been mentioned. Dave had it quite high, actually, higher than I expected on your list, but I think that goes to show the staying power of it. This is Genghis Tron and Dream Weapon. This album has been handcrafted for me. We joked about it at the time, it's the most Duncan album that's ever been written. And I love it so fucking much. And genuinely, when you said Genghis Tron had a new album coming out, I had an inkling of what I thought it might sound like, even with a 13-year hiatus. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Could not have been more wrong. But by God, am I happy that I was wrong. There is a craft to this album that I think is easily... I'm glad you said that you listened to it through good headphones. Back when I was reviewing it, the thing I kept coming back to was how clever the layering was in the music. Mm-hmm. Like there's just bits that are just kind of drifting in the background that elevate whole sections in the synths. And this is a more synth-driven release for sure. But there's plenty of guitar work on display, and I've read loads of reviews where people are like, "Oh well, we've got rid of the guitars," and I'm like, "It's all over the fucking album. You're just not paying attention. There's effects on it. It's doing different things. The new drummer is great, fucking absolutely brilliant. I love what he's doing. He mixes up really kind of harsh, almost industrial sounds in his fills and stuff, and then other moments." strips it right back to just like basic, like 4/4 time and whatnot, without any frills, and it works. It has swaths of kind of 80s, what we now call synthwave, but back in the day it was just 80s synth. And there owes a lot to specifically stuff from things like the Vangelis, Tangerine Dream, John Carpenter for sure. And those interweave with it. Vocally, it is stunning. I love the new vocalist. He has this kind of eerie tone that just lets him play around with... It's more like kind of textures, ideas and themes, having read the lyrics now. It's all about that. It's about crafting an idea and letting the music take you around that idea. It's very, 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 very clever, and his lyrics match perfectly the soundscape that's been created by the band. I'd mentioned at the time, they have a track called Pyrocene, and I was like, oh, it sounds a bit like Burn from Nine Inch Nails. And then the band commented on our video saying, well, that's because it's a big influence, and yeah, it's kind of what we're going for. And I was like, on the money, lads, on the money. The fact he even took time to listen to us waffle about it made me kind of smile. Because this is the art I keep saying to everyone. That Genghis Tron. What was it? You've been listening to the new Katy Perry, Genghis Tron. You know what I mean? Like, oh, what's that? You're only listening to Meshuggah, Genghis Tron. Like any way to slip it in a conversation, I've been doing it. Everyone this year for their birthday has been purchased a digital copy of Genghis Tron. I really wish I'd done that now. Now that I've made that as a joke, that would have been the best thing to do. But it's a band. They're a band who have come back for all the right reasons and none of the wrong reasons. If you're going to come back off a 13-year hiatus and you have nothing new to say or nothing new to prove or nothing left in the tank except a sound that you essentially disbanded over 13 years ago, then why are you coming back? Bless the fucking record label, Relapse Records, who put this out, who are doing really interesting stuff this year. They're just like, between that and Zombie this year, they're making me a happy camper. But the production, we suck this guy off something rotten in this podcast, and rightly so. Not one production from Kurt Ballou sounds the same as another. Nope. And then just when you think you kind of, well, he always sticks to kind of punk and kind of sludge and hardcore. Like, it comes away and creates a sound with a band that is just unlike anything else I've heard this year. And it is front to back a flawless fucking album. I absolutely adore it. It's one of the best things I've heard in years. And it will be, unless something absolutely destroys me this year, it will, and I'm marking it right now, in July, it'll be my number one album at the end of the year. And maybe my number one album for a couple of years to come is absolutely fucking incredible. Number one for me, Genghis Tron and Dream Weapon.
Nice. Kyle, to top it all off, what's your number one?
What is my number one? This band brings me as much joy to listen to as Sixth did way back, what was it, 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely fucking... It's like listening to razors stab you in the ears, but in a way that you enjoy. It's so full of like serrated edges, and it's so harsh sometimes, but the guitar work is unbelievable. And the lyrics are so fucking good. But this is Mirrors by Pupil Slicer.
Nice.
One of the best band names I've ever heard in my life. And it's a band name that perfectly sums up how they sound. It's like, yeah, you definitely did just slice my eye. Oh my God. I can't get enough of this album. I've listened to it so many times. I've worn out the MP3s, you know. They're all corrupt on my hard drive.
Yeah.
They're absolutely top of my Spotify playlist and everything. I can't get enough of it. I listen to it over and over again. I've tried to show people that album. They're just like, it's too heavy for me, Carl. I can't get into it. What am I listening to? I'm like, just listen harder, you fucking ignorant fuck. And it's great. Yeah. And everyone gets, you're really intense about this. I'm like, that's so good. Just anyway. But no, they've gone on to do like really good things just this year alone. This came out in March? And
I
since
think
then,
she's
it's,
already
what,
writing
fourth-
new stuff as well. I think they're back writing stuff, which is fucking nuts.
But they've been doing interviews with people from Knotfest and all over the place. They're just climbing the metal ladder so quickly, and I hope it doesn't get to their heads, and I hope they can handle it, because holy fuck, these 3 people, was it 4 people? I think it's, I don't remember how many, but these
3-piece.
yeah, I think it's a 3-piece. Yeah, they are gonna kill it for years to come with stuff like this. It's absolutely one of the best bands I've heard in the past few years, and that's why they're top of my list, because I can't get enough of it. I love listening to it. I wish I could play guitar like that. Through my 20 years of playing guitar, there's no way I can even come close to that level of what the fuckery. And yeah, it's just fantastic, and I implore anybody who's listening that wants to listen to guitars do things guitars should not be doing, listen to this. It's amazing. It's so fucking heavy. Choppy.
Good pick, Kyle.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. Our top 10 albums of 2021 so far. Pretty decent lists, guys, I must say. There wasn't even a lot of crossover until we got down to the kind of last few, but
It's no Architect,
solid.
so it doesn't count.
I know, you guys still got the Architects in your list, no?
Man, that album isn't even on my top fucking 1,000. I haven't listened to 1,000 albums.
It's
this
such
year
a
yet.
beige album. I hate to be,
It's a
I hate to constantly cast shade on it, but it's such a beige album that seems to be over every fucking publication, and I just don't know why. There you go. Like, well, let's promote a band
What was it
like
you were saying
Architects
earlier?
that have
Money
a
Talk?
huge audience base already built in, that'll get a #1 album in the UK over a band like Pupil Slicer, who are, you know, completely organic, DIY.
Changing the game and doing something completely unique, and Architects are just like, we made Pop the album. They're like, oh, great, fucking just get out, bunch of assholes. Such a
No,
all right, anyway.
didn't make the list. I'm afraid not.
Nope.
It was tough though. I mean, there was definitely a few on the fringe for me that were just like, oh, they could be in there, but you know, it was tough. There was a couple like your like Humanity's Last Breath was hanging about there. There was Impure Wilhelmina was hanging about there as
That
well.
was almost damn near in my list. So was is it the Lion's Door?
Lion's Door, yeah.
Yeah, that was almost in there as well. I love that album. I really like just skirting around in there. Had we had a list of 20, I dare say I think there would probably been a bit more crossover with us.
Probably.
But what
Head
was
of Jador was almost on there, but I mentioned Old and it's got the same members. I'm like,
well, there's and the thing about it is there is still so much more still to come out before the end of the year that there's no way to really predict where we're going to end up at the end of the year. And I actually take it back. I said at the start that I think that the quality hasn't been on the same level, and I actually think, if anything, our lists speak to a better variety of music in the first half of this year compared to the last one, because in our lists we've went from everything from sludge through kind of older school rock, post-metal, death metal, ambience, hardcore, you know, tech stuff. Well, there's a huge like mix of different genres in there and styles, and it's only getting better. It's only and the like old hands that are still churning out the best stuff they've done, new bands that are just so fucking exciting. Good time to be a metal fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know what's on your list. This is obviously going on all the usual places the podcast will go, but we're going to put this as a video on YouTube hopefully as well. So stick some comments in, let us know what you think. What are your top 10 albums of the year so far? Happy to hear your thoughts and chat about those albums that you've picked. So that is it. That is our top 10 of 2021 so far. We will do this again at the end of the year, no doubt, to get our final list. I think we did 20 last year.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot longer.
Yes, it will. We'll be doing this right at the end of the year with our top 20s as well. But that's the list. Thank you for listening to that.